So the argument about whether 1 billion lions could beat one of each Pokemon was the hottest topic of 3 years ago. Well, I wasn't a YouTuber then, so today I'm joining the war on lions on the side of lions. Why? Well, if it takes 1,000 lions to defeat each Pokemon, then they still easily win. Even if it takes 1 million lions per Pokemon, Okay, well, a little under 1 million. Point being, the Lions have to be overwhelmingly outmatched to lose. So as long as you can shut down enough of the Pokemon, then the Lions win by default. So here we go. The obvious place to start is with Blaziken. So Blaziken, with the benefit of Speed Boost, never loses in terms of speed, and it can continuously one-shot Lions as they come up. This oversimplified version, as you can imagine, has a lot of flaws, and kind of proves the rule. For one thing, it ignores priority moves. Quick Attack, which is an incredibly common move, will always outspeed even the fastest Pokemon because it resolves before speed. And sure, priority moves don't do a ton of damage, but it's not a numbers game, it's about fallibility. Sure, you can argue that Lions don't have access to moves like Quick Attack, but the existence of priority moves points to the fact that a fast move by a regular creature beats a regular move by a fast creature. And even if we skip to a more reliable Pokemon, Breloom, which has access to Mach Punch, it still becomes a problem that it can only kill one of them at once. A single attack is not very useful in turn-based combat when you're getting mauled by 16 lions, but that's bridging into anime territory, which is another cup of worms. Cup of worms? Can of worms. Cup of tea. In the actual game, the max number of creatures in a fight at once can be 6 in a 3v3. Even if we allow for Blaziken, Breloom, and, I don't know, Lucario fighting side by side, the real problem is that they'll eventually run out of PP. In the Pokemon games, all Pokemon have a number of power points associated with a move, which they have to spend to use them. Eventually, likely after around 100 moves, they'll run out of PP for all of their moves, and they'll be left with only one option, Struggle. And Struggle is not a great option because it kills you after you use it 4 times. So what about PP stalling? Well, I know that sounds like a euphemism for edging. There exists a held item called a Lepaberry, which restores 10 PP, which seems insignificant, but the abilities like Harvest and Pickup allows you to recover held items, as well as the move Recycle. So with a defensive wall like Slowbro, Snorlax, and Stakataka, they could potentially stall them out infinitely without dying. Except this plan is also not without flaws. There are moves that interrupt item strategies like Incinerate, that destroys items, Knock Off, which knocks them off, and Thief, which you get the picture. And more importantly, if you go this route, you open up a dangerous bag of worms. If you allow the Pokemon to use held items, then what's to say the Lions don't also get them? That means 1 billion fully automatic machine guns to obliterate all of the Pokemon before they even get a chance to run out of PP. But there are talks of a bold strategy for the Pokemon, the OTK. If the legendary Pokemon Kyogre uses Water Spout, a move with 150 power, and all of the other Pokemon use support moves, they could not just kill all of the lions at once, but massively overkill them. This idea is perfect, except for one slight flaw. It hinges on the idea that the move could even hit all of them at once. There are multi-target moves in Pokemon, typically falling into 2 categories: cone-shaped effects that hit all foes, and aura-shaped effects that hit all Pokemon. Water Spout is the former of which, but critically, I misspoke, it doesn't target all foes, but rather all adjacent foes. That means it can only hit at maximum 3 lions. Well, not exactly. In Pokemon X and Y, there are horde battles where a Pokemon can hit up to 5 foes at once, but the assumption would be, based on mechanics, that it's arranged like this, and is still based on adjacents. So, are they forced to take them out one by one? Well, not necessarily. There are still long-range moves which can affect non-adjacent Pokemon, but most of them have little practical application because they are entirely status moves that deal no damage. But there is a conversation to be had about 3 of them. Let's talk about Perish Song. Perish Song causes every single Pokemon to die in 4 turns. That's the whole move. This may seem like an MAD strategy that just kind of leads to a draw, but any Pokemon with the ability Soundproof can just ignore it. That kind of gives you a hint to what my workaround is. I think the implication is that Perish Song only works if you can hear it, and with a massive 1 billion lions, I think it's entirely possible the majority of them are out of earshot. That leaves Sandstorm. Sandstorm sets up a sandstorm, if you can believe it, which causes all Pokemon to be damaged for 1/16 of their max HP every turn. Again, another MAD strategy, but there are ways around it. Being a Rock, Steel, or Ground type obviously makes you immune to that kind of damage, but also possessing any ability related to sandstorms, which they kind of give away like candy. Sure, Flygon, whose entire description is about sandstorms, gets none, but a cactus, 2 dogs, and a lizard got one. And lions, though commonly portrayed in the savannah, savanna, are also found to the south in the Kalahari Desert. So while translating the existence of lions into Pokemon, I think it's entirely reasonable to give them at least one of the abilities. That leaves Hail. Hail is the same as Sandstorm, but it's made of ice instead of rocks. There are ways around it, but lions don't live in ice. So I guess they will take damage from the snow. Except will they? I don't think they will, because I lied. It doesn't damage you. In fact, hail doesn't exist. In Generation 9, they replaced the weather condition and move hail with snowstorm, which doesn't deal damage. I mean, that's so crazy, right? Can you imagine if in real life weather events just got, weaker over time? Ah, crap. On the bright side, that does mean if somebody thinks the Lions lose, they're a climate change denier. But this change also occurred in Pokemon Legends Arceus, which is the first chronologically and probably the coldest region. So game mechanics just make no sense. They can't be translated effectively, so we'll have to look at the lore of the Pokemon universe. Now, I'm not a professional power scaler, but I do know that Terapagos has Ghost in the name, which means he's somewhat comparable to Bat Ghost, who can scale beyond Hyper Goku Versal with just 1 Battosecond of prep time. There are a couple of other problem entries we need to discuss. By every definition of the word, Macargo is an anomaly. As is repeated throughout its Pokédex entries, Macargo has a body temperature of about 10,000 degrees Celsius, which is equal to about 10,000 degrees Kelvin. As many have noted, that is comparable to about the temperature of the Sun at 5,000 Kelvin or the Earth's core. Now, that is the surface of the Sun, which is not remarkably hot. As Randall Munroe once said, it's hotter than, Phoenix, citation needed, but compared to the interior, it's downright chilly, and also just outside the surface for reasons we don't yet understand. There's just one problem. The sun is made out of plasma. Macargo, with twice the temperature, is still solid. So what the heck is this thing made of? Well, the Earth's core is also still solid at that temperature, but it is under 3.6 million atmospheres of pressure. Macargo is under 1. And it gets worse. Macargo weighs 55 kilograms and has a height of 0.8 meters. Using some of Macargo's sprites, it's about half as wide as it is tall, and about as long as it is tall. Reducing that by about 33% to account for error, I'll give it a volume of about 0.17 cubic meters. That means it has a volume of about 310 kilograms per cubic meter. That's an order of magnitude smaller than it should be. What the heck is this thing made of? It better be the fourth Porygon evolution made out of some ultralight carbon nanotubes with an absurd melting point. Let's just move on to Diglett. Diglett can move at the speed of light. Okay, maybe these statements are unreliable. All of this, to be frank, nonsense, coupled with the fact that the Pokédex is filled out over time, leads people to disregard it on the grounds that the player, a 12-year-old kid, is just making stuff up. So that leaves the anime, but as we leave, we have to address something. If we can't use Bite as a dark type move, then we need to talk about ghost type Pokemon. Fortunately, the vast majority of ghost types aren't really incorporeal, it's just that this guy and Prevos are meant to be clouds of poisonous gas. And for the spirits, we need to focus on the rules of the contest. Is it a fight to the death? If so, then things that are already dead shouldn't be allowed to participate. And if they are, then we're faced with the age-old problem that if a ghost kills you, you just become a ghost. So the lions all have a second life, so let's not crack into that barrel of worms. Very fortunately for me, the anime and films seem to be where the Pokemon are at their weakest. Remember that scene in Detective Pikachu where 2 humans managed to escape from 3 genetically enhanced Greninja? What's that? You don't remember it because that movie was incredibly forgettable? Well, it happened. This makes sense. The anime focuses mostly on human characters, so it makes them comparable in strength. Also, fighting-type gym leaders won't stop sparring with their Pokemon, and it's the same thematic core that puts the nail in the coffin. Basically, every Pokemon, yes, even legendaries, are shown to be at least in the same range. The focus on human characters means that the fight between them are rarely settled by their own intrinsic power, but by the tactics of their trainer. So if we're talking tactics, shouldn't the Pokemon have the advantage of teamwork? Ah, yes, Pokemon, known for their teamwork. Look, I think deciding that Groudon and Kyogre aren't going to immediately kill each other is character assassination. If you want to make the scenario where they don't, then you're changing them, and you're allowing the lines to also be changed. And the same is true for Reshiram and Zekrom, and Yveltal and Xerneas, and Necrozma, and basically everyone. And maybe Giratina, but the lore flip-flops on him every few generations. And you could argue the same for the lions, but carnivores don't just kill each other willy-nilly. Unless they're actively seeking prey, predators can be downright cordial. Sure, if they start starving, they'll kill and eat each other, but if it comes to that, the lions have more biomass anyways and would survive longer. That leaves God, and also Hoopa, which is weirdly similar in power. Arceus is claimed to be the creator of the Pokemon universe, which is where I'm going to pull my last trick from. We do not live in the Pokemon universe, and I would argue that the creator, or so-called God, has their powers tied to their world. So there's no reason to believe Arceus can retain godlike powers over here. And we already have our own creator, Shigeru Miyamoto, who created Pokemon Satoshi Tajiri. And if you really want to go there, then we also have another creator, God. And lions are associated in the Bible with the house of Judah, which includes David, Solomon, and yes, Jesus Christ himself. The power of God clearly defeats the power of anime, no contest. But I've been playing defense long enough. Here's my offense. Project Adam and Eve. What's the difference really between 1 billion and 999,999,998? We separate a single breeding pair from the rest, and if they fail, we shall repopulate, and their children shall fight, and their children's children shall fight. I will sacrifice infinite lions